And so today I'm here to share with you the Ktunaxa Creation Story, or what we call the Ktunaxa Creation Story. This story, the way that my grandmother used to start the story, I remember that she used to always start the story by saying, this is a story that takes place a long time ago. It's a story that takes place in a time before the Nasuʔkin were here on the earth. Nasuʔkin are the human beings. And so this story is a story that takes place a long time ago, before there were Nasuʔkin here on the earth. Now at this time, a long time ago, the creatures, the Tuxkamna, all the creatures of the earth, the four-leggeds and the wingeds, the fish, the creatures of the earth, they used to come together from time to time. Their Nasuʔkins, their chiefs, the chiefs of all the living beings would come together to talk about the big ideas of the day. Well, there was this one time when Nasuʔkin is the Ktunaxa word for the creator, or the great spirit, Nasuʔkin. There was a time when Nasuʔkin, the great spirit, the creator, sent out word to all of the Tuxkamna, all of the living beings at that time. Nasuʔkin said, there's going to be a gathering. I want all of the Nasuʔkins to come to this gathering because I have something important that I need to share with the Nasuʔkins. And I have something important to ask the Nasuʔkins. I have a very important question for all of the chiefs of all of the living beings. And so it happened. It came to be that there was this gathering of all of the Nasuʔkins, of all of the living beings. And when they had all gathered, Nasuʔkin appeared before them. The great spirit came to them and said, the reason why I've gathered you here today, the reason why I've asked each and every one of you Nasuʔkins to come here today is because I have something so important to tell you. And I have a question for you. I have a question for each and every one of you. Now, the thing that I have to tell you is this. Soon, very, very soon, the Nasuʔkin, the human beings, will be here on the earth. The Nasuʔkin, the human beings, are coming to the earth, and they will be here very soon. And the question that I have for you, the question that I have for each and every one of you chiefs, is I want to know what it is that you will give to the human beings when they come to the earth. What it is that you will do for the human beings when they come here to the earth. Well, one of the first chiefs, one of the first Nasuʔkins to stand up was Tsupka, the chief of the deer. Nasuʔkin Tsupka stood up and said, oh, well, I give myself to the human beings. I give my whole self to the human beings. I give my flesh for food, my skin for clothing, my bones and my antlers for tools for the human beings. I give my whole self to the human beings. As long as the human beings remember to sing my song and say my prayer, I will always be there for them. And so it went. The other Nasuʔkins started to stand up and saying what they would do for the human beings. One of the next Nasuʔkins to stand up was Nupku, the chief of the bears. Nupku stood up and said, oh, well, I give myself to the human beings. I give my whole self to the human beings. I give my flesh for food, my skin for clothing, and for shelter for the human beings. And if the human beings ever need my help spiritually, I will be there for them, as long as they remember to sing my song and say my prayer. And so it went. One after another, these Nasuʔkins, these chiefs, are standing up saying what they would do for the human beings. Now, some of the chiefs that stood up said, I will have nothing to do with the human beings. I will stay away from the human beings. I will do my best to stay away from the Nasuʔkin. They will hardly ever see me. I will hardly ever see them. Now, one of the Nasuʔkins, one of the chiefs that had this message was Swat, the cougar. Swa said, I will do my best to stay away from the human beings. But if they ever need my help spiritually, I will be there for them, as long as they sing my song, say my prayer. And so it went. One after another, these Nasuʔkin standing up, saying what they would do for the human beings, what they would give to the human beings. And they all had that same message: sing our songs, say our prayers, and we will always be there. And so it went. Pretty soon, the plant chiefs were standing up, because the plants were there. Remember, this was a gathering of all the living beings of the world, and the plants are alive. And so the plants were standing up, offering themselves for food and for medicines. Yawunik, that's the little huckleberry. Yawunik was standing up saying, oh, will I offer myself to the human beings for food, as long as they sing my song and say my prayer. And the trees started to stand up as well, because the trees are alive. And so they were offering themselves to the human beings as well, for building material and tools, fiber for making things. And so they also had that same message: sing our song, say our prayer, and we will always be there. And so it went. Pretty soon, the rocks were standing up. That's right, the rocks. They were there as well, because the rocks are alive. And so the rocks offered themselves to the human beings for building material and tools. As long as we remember their songs and their prayers, they will always be here for us. And so it went. The bird chiefs joined in, the fish chiefs joined in, all the living beings were there, and they were all saying what they would do for the human beings. And so, as you can imagine, this meeting, it went on for a long time. There's so many living beings in this world, and they were all taking their turn, standing up, saying what they would offer. And so this meeting went on for a long time. Weeks went by, and they continued standing up and saying what they would do for the human beings. Now, while this meeting was happening, there were these two little sisters, these two little birds that decided that they were going to go fishing. They didn't need to be at that meeting. They weren't chiefs, they weren't Nasuʔkin. And so these two little sisters, these two little birds, they decided that they were going to go fishing at a place known as Ktunaxa, today known in English as Bonner's Ferry, down on the Kootenay River. And so these two little birds, these two little sisters, they go to the Kootenay River at Ktunaxa, and when they get to the edge of the river, the big sister, the older sister, says to the little sister, hey, you know what? You know what? I think if I got out there further into the water, I think I could catch bigger fish. And so that older sister, the bigger sister, she starts to wade out into the water. And immediately, as soon as she enters into the river, the little sister starts to freak out. No, don't go in the river, don't go in the river. The Yawunik might get you. Well, the Yawunik is this giant water monster that lives in the Kootenay River and the Columbia River. Because at this time, when this story happens, the Kootenay and the Columbia, they're joined together in this one big, huge water system. And the Yawunik lives in these two rivers. The Yawunik is a giant, big, giant water monster with a big, huge, giant appetite. Oh, Yawunik would eat anything that came down to the river for a drink. That's an elk. If this big old elk were to come down to the river for a drink, well, Yawunik would eat that would eat that elk. Even Nupko, even if a big old bear were to come down to the river, Yawunik would eat that bear as well. It didn't matter how big or how small, for that matter. Even if tiny little Intsuk, and that's a mouse, even if tiny little Intsuk, a tiny little mouse, was to come down to the water for a drink, well, Yawunik would eat him too. And so, as you can imagine, the animals, the birds, they were scared of Yawunik. You might say Yawunik was a bit of a menace. No, don't go in the river. Don't go in the river. The Yawunik might get you. Oh, it's okay. I just want to get out here further into the water where it's deeper because I think I could catch bigger fish. And so that big sister, she keeps wading out into the water, and the water's getting deeper on her as she goes. Little sister's on shore, and she's freaking out. She doesn't want her big sister in there. No, don't go in the river. Yawunik. Well, eventually, that little sister decides, I've got to get my big sister out of the river. I've got to get her out of there. And so the little sister goes into the river as well. And just as she's reaching for her big sister to pull her big sister out of the water, the Yawunik comes up out of the water and swallows them both and swims away. They're gone. Well, these two sisters, they had a brother, and their brother's name is Yamakpach. Yamakpach. He's a red-headed woodpecker. Yamakpach. He's the brother of those two sisters. Yamakpach. And he finds out about his sisters. He hears the news that his sisters have been swallowed up by the Yawunik. And as you can imagine, he's sad. He's sad that his sisters have been swallowed up by the Yawunik. He's sad that his sisters are gone. But more than being sad, he's mad. He's mad at that Yawunik. He's mad that the Yawunik has taken his sisters, and he decides something has got to be done about that Yawunik. Something's got to be done, and I'm going to be the one to do it. But I might need some help. Oh, I know. I could ask Nasuʔkin for help. Yes, I think Nasuʔkin the giant would help me. Well, Nasuʔkin the giant. This is a giant of the land. Nasuʔkin the giant, he's so big, he's so tall that if he were to stand upright, he would hit his head on the ceiling of the sky. Nasuʔkin the giant, he's Nasuʔkin, he's chief of all the land animals. And so Yamakpach goes to him and tells him the story about his sisters and how he wants to do something about the Yawunik. And Nasuʔkin agrees. Nasuʔkin says, yes, you're right. We should do something about that Yawunik. That Yawunik has been breaking the law. That Yawunik has been going around just killing at will, killing whoever he wants to kill, and consuming as much as he wants. He's breaking the law. We should form a hunting party and hunt him down and kill him. Oh, yes, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And so word goes out that this hunting party is being formed. And there's animals and birds that come from all around to join that hunting party. One of the first to come along is Skinkoots. Skinkoots the coyote. Oh, that coyote comes running along. Hey, I heard you guys are putting together a hunting party. Can I come with you? Please, can I come with you? Look, I brought my own spear. It's a really good spear, I promise. Made it all by myself. Please, can I come with you? Please, please. Okay, sure, Skinkoots. Of course, coyote, you can come with us. And so this hunting party is formed. And they get word. They heard that the Yawunik had been sighted now in the Columbia River up by Akiskonuk. Akiskonuk. Today is that area around Fairmont and Windermere, Akiskonuk. And so the hunting party, they go up there. Sure enough, Yawunik is in the Columbia River up there. And so they split up. There's animals on both sides of the river. There's birds flying above, and they start to chase that Yawunik. And that Yawunik starts swimming towards the south as hard as and as fast as he can. And he goes from the Columbia right into the Kootenay, and he continues swimming towards the south. And he's able to do that because remember, at this time when this story happens, the two rivers, they're joined together in one big system. And so he's able to go from the Columbia right into the Kootenay, and he continues swimming as hard and as fast as he can towards the south. And that hunting party now, they're chasing after him. And Skinkoots, the coyote, he's with the hunting party. Chase is part of the chase, but he's not really paying attention to where they're going. He's more interested in the sights and the sounds and the smells. Oh, the smells. Oh, that's a good smell over there. Oh, oh, that's a good smell over there. He's a coyote. And so he's not really paying attention to where he's going. He's not paying attention to the path in front of him. And he trips and he falls. He tumbles and he lands right in the river. He splashes down into the river. And as soon as he hits the river, he starts to freak out. Help, help, please get me out of the river. Please get me out of the river. The Yawunik's going to get me. Well, Nasuʔkin the giant reaches over and he grabs up this big handful of wassa. And he puts his hand with the wassa out towards Skinkoots and he says, here, Skinkoots, grab on. And Skinkoots grabs onto that wassa and he pulls him to shore. And Nasuʔkin looks down at his hands and he sees that he's got this handful of wassa. So he says, we will name this place Wassa so that people, those human beings, when those human beings are finally here on the earth, they can remember this place where Skinkoots fell in the river and how we saved him using wassa. So Wassa will be the name for this place. Some of you might know or be familiar with the place that is called Wassa nowadays, just north of Cranbrook, just beside the Kootenay River there. Well, wassa is a Ktunaxa word for a type of plant, and that plant in English is known as the horsetail plant, the rush, the horsetail reed, depending on how you refer to it. But in Ktunaxa, we call that plant wassa, and that place, that's a Ktunaxa name for that place. And the chase continues. Yawunik keeps on swimming as hard and as fast as he can towards the south, right past that place where the St. Mary's River joins the Kootenay River. That is Akam. That is where my home community is. Akam, that place where those two rivers join. And Yawunik continues swimming towards the south. And not too far past that place where those two rivers join together, the hunting party have to stop. Now, the reason why they have to stop this time is because a tiny little fella has stopped them. This tiny little fella sitting beside the river. Hey, whoa, whoa, stop, stop. Where are you guys going? What are you guys doing? Well, they talk to this little fella. They tell him about how they have formed this hunting party and that they're hunting down the Yawunik. And this little fella, oh, well, that sounds like a great idea. Can I join the hunting party? Yes, of course you can, Mayuk. You join in with us. Nasuʔkin the giant says, we will name this place Mayuk so that we can remember where the weasel joined the hunting party. Mayuk is the Ktunaxa name for the weasel. And today, if you're ever on the road driving from Cranbrook going towards Jaffrey, before you get to Jaffrey at the base of Baker Mountain, there's a tiny little hamlet of a place known as the Mayuk settlement area. That's what it says on the sign in English. Well, Mayuk is the Ktunaxa name for that place. It's where the weasel joined the hunting party. And the chase continues. Yawunik keeps on swimming down towards the south as hard and as fast as he can, and they continue chasing him towards the south, all the way down south to this place we know as Akswak, today known as Libby. There's a great big dam on the river there now. It's what forms Lake Kootenay. In Ktunaxa, we know that place as Akswak. Now down in that part of the world, northern Montana, northern Idaho, we refer to it as Skinkoots. That's the land of the coyote, Skinkoots. And the river turns and it starts coming back towards the north, eventually flows through Atspuamakas. Atspuamakas is the land of the wolverine, today known as the Creston Valley area, Atspuamakas. And the river eventually flows into Kootenay Lake. Now Yawunik swims into the west arm of Kootenay Lake, past this place we call Akyamchup, the place where you can see to the bottom of the water. It's so clear there, Akyamchup. Now today, people know that place as Nelson. And I remember probably about a decade ago, I was invited to go over to Nelson. And so I thought to myself, oh, I'm going to Akyamchup, the place where you can see to the bottom of the water. And so I decided to take a look, to really take a look. The people who invited me over put me up in the Prestige Inn in Nelson, you know, the one right there on the water, by the water. And it has its own dock, right out behind the hotel. There's the Prestige Inn dock. And so I walked out on that dock and I got to the end of the dock. And when I got to the end of that dock, I looked over because I wanted to see to the bottom of the water. I just wanted to see how clear it was. And sure enough, I could see right down to the bottom of the water. It was so clear. There was probably, I don't know, maybe about 20 feet of water there, but I could see right to the bottom. It was so clear. And, oh, the heck is that down there? It was a shopping cart. I could see a shopping cart down there in the bottom of the water. I don't know, maybe somebody thought it would be a good idea to throw a shopping cart in the water, but I could see it. It was there. Akyamchu, the place where you can see to the bottom of the water. It's so clear. And the chase continues. Yawunik keeps on swimming, eventually swims into the Columbia River at a place we know as Kiksichuk, today known as the Castlegar area. When they get to the Columbia River, Yawunik turns towards the north and starts swimming towards the north. The hunting party, when they get to the Columbia River, they turn and they start chasing towards the north. But they have to stop. Very soon they have to stop. And the reason being this time is because they have come to a place known as Nasuʔkin. Nasuʔkin. What it is it's this big, huge cliff beside the river. And the belief was that if you're traveling north on the Columbia River, when you get to Nasuʔkin, when you get to that cliff, you stop and you take out your bow and arrow and you aim towards the cliff and you shoot. There's a crack in that cliff. That's what you're aiming at. And if you're able to hit that crack with your arrow, then you can continue your journey. It will be safe. But if you shoot and you miss, you better just stop and wait for a few days. Might not be safe. That was the belief there at Nasuʔkin. My grandmother shared with me that in the Ktunaxa language, ak is our word for arrow. And she said Nasuʔkin, what it means or what it's referring to is arrow rock, or that place where you shoot your arrows into the rock, that crack there at that rock. Nasuʔkin. I'm not sure where that place is today. Likely it's underwater because of the dams. And the chase continues. Yawunik continues swimming towards the north, and they continue chasing him towards the north. Now over there in that part of the world, we refer to it as Mitskakas Amakas. It's the land of the chickadee. Mitskakas Amakas, the land of the chickadee, today known as the West Kootenays. And that Yawunik swims up past Dunwakin Mituk Mitskakas. That's kind of a mouthful, hey? Dunwakin Mituk Mitskakas, today known as Revelstoke. Up around the big bend of the Columbia River, and now they're swimming back towards the south again. So they swim past this place known as Aknukhuk, which is the golden area. And then just a little ways past Aknukhuk, the Yawunik does something that they didn't expect. The Yawunik just stops swimming. He's lying there, barely moving, lying there in the water. He's resting. It's a long journey, right? And so the Yawunik has stopped swimming and he's lying there in the water resting. And the hunting party, they come up and they see the Yawunik lying there in the water. And Skinkoots, the coyote, right away, Skinkoots, the coyote, please let me go get him. Let me go get him. Look, it's a really good spear. I promise. It's a really good spear. I made it all by myself. Please let me go get him. Okay, Skinkoots, you go get him. And so Coyote, he starts to sneak up on the Yawunik. And he gets right close to the Yawunik, right beside the Yawunik, and he raises up his spear. And just as he's about to come down with his spear, the Yawunik notices him and starts to swim. And Coyote comes down with his spear and just grazes the fin of that Yawunik, just catches him on the fin. And this little trickle of blood comes out of that fin. And this little trickle of blood, well, it leaves the river and it flows up into the mountains. And that little trickle of blood, it turns into a creek. And Nasuʔkin the giant says, We will name this place Nasuʔkin, so we can remember this little trickle of blood that's turned into this creek. Nasuʔkin will be the name for this place. Now today, if you're ever on the road traveling between Radium and Golden, about halfway in between, there's that little hamlet of a place known as Briscoe. Well, this is Nasuʔkin. There's a creek just close to Briscoe that comes out of the mountains and flows into the Columbia. Well, that's Nasuʔkin, that little trickle of blood that turned into that creek. And so Nasuʔkin, that area around Briscoe. And the Yawunik got away. And once again, the Yawunik swims as hard and as fast as he can towards the south. Now we are in the part of the world known as Ktunaxa, the land of the eagle, today known as the Columbia Valley. And Yawunik swims as hard and as fast as he can towards the south from the Columbia River back into the Kootenay, continues swimming as hard and as fast as he can towards the south. He swims through what we call Ktunaxa, which is the land of the woodtick. And he continues on down towards Nasuʔkin, the land of the coyote, northwestern Montana, northern Idaho. It comes back up through Nasuʔkin, the land of the wolverine, the Creston Valley area, back into Nasuʔkin, the land of the chickadee, the West Kootenays, back up towards the north and around the big bend of the Columbia River, and back towards the south again. And the chase happens like this for days, and weeks go by. Even months go by. They continue chasing that Yawunik around and around in those two rivers, all the way up to the north and back down to the south again, over to the west and around to the east. Round and around they go in those two rivers. For months, the chase continues until one day, the hunting party, they find themselves over in Nasuʔkin, the land of the chickadee, the West Kootenays. And they have to stop. Once again, they have to stop. Now this time, the reason why they're stopping is because they have heard this laughter. There's this laughter coming from somewhere. It's kind of like this big belly kind of laughter, right? It's, oh. There's this laughter coming from somewhere. And so they stop and they're looking, where is this laughter coming from? When eventually they see, sitting up on the side of the mountain, Kikum, the wise old spirit, is sitting up on the side of this mountain. And so they stop and they say to Kikum, what are you laughing at? And Kikum says, well, I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing at all of you, you hunting party. I've been sitting here on the side of this mountain now for weeks, watching you. Every couple of days you come running past here chasing that Yawunik. You're never going to catch him. He's too big. He's too strong. That's what's making me laugh. And then Kikum turns his attention towards Nasuʔkin, the giant. And he says, Nasuʔkin, you giant, why don't you use your size? Use your strength. Cut across the mountains. Go to that place where the two rivers join together. Use your strength. Cut those two rivers off from one another. And the next time Yawunik comes swimming down from the north, well, you'll have him trapped. Hey, that's a pretty good idea. That's not a bad idea. And so they decide to split up. The hunting party, they continue chasing the Yawunik up towards the north. Nasuʔkin, he uses his size and he cuts across the mountains and he goes to that place where the two rivers join together. And he uses his strength and he moves the earth there. And he cuts the two rivers off from one another, forming the Columbia Lake. And sure enough, just like Kikum said, the next time Yawunik came swimming down from the north, well, he was trapped in that newly formed Columbia Lake. And the honor of killing the Yawunik goes to Yamakpa, the red-headed woodpecker. Yamakpa, the brother of those two sisters. Yamakpa kills the Yawunik. And Nasuʔkin, the giant, drags that Yawunik from the water and starts to tear them apart, tear them to pieces, handing out the meat to the animals so that they can eat. And then Nasuʔkin the giant reaches down and he grabs up the bones, the ribs of the Yawunik. And he takes those bones and he scatters them in all different directions. And the bones land and they turn into the hoodoos. You know those hoodoos that you see at Dutch Creek on the north end of Columbia Lake, just by Fairmont there? Well, that's the bones, the ribs of the Yawunik. Or if you've ever been lucky enough to be out at Fort Steele and you take that little steam train that they have at Fort Steele and it goes out to the observation deck and you look west across the Kootenay River, there's a bank of hoodoos there. That's the bones, the ribs of the Yawunik. And then Nasuʔkin reaches down and grabs up this handful of the white swim bladder. And he takes that white swim bladder and he scrunches it all up and he scatters it in all different directions around the world. And he says, this will be the white race of people. They will be large in numbers and they will be powerful. And then he reaches down and he grabs up the black kidney. And he takes that black kidney and he scrunches that black kidney up and he scatters it in all different directions around the world. And he says, this will be the black race of people. They will be large in numbers and they too will be powerful. And then he reaches down and he grabs up the roe, the eggs, and he takes that roe and he scrunches it all up and he scatters it in all different directions around the world. And he says, this will be the yellow race of people. They will be large in numbers and they too will be powerful. And then he looks at his hands. His hands are covered in blood. So he picks up some grass and he wipes the blood off his hands. The blood falls to the ground and he says, this will be the red race of people. They will be small in numbers, but they too will be powerful. And then they realize, Nasuʔkin and Yamakpach, skin coach, they all realize that what they have done is they have just fulfilled Napika's prophecy of the human beings, of the Nasuʔkin coming to the earth. And they're happy. They're so happy that they could fulfill Napika's prophecy that they start to celebrate. Nasuʔkin the giant is so happy that he forgets himself and he stands upright to celebrate, but he hits his head on the ceiling of the sky and he falls over and dies. Nasuʔkin's head went all the way down south to this place we call Ktunaxa, which today is known as Missoula, down in Montana. And his feet went all the way north to this place we call Yawunik, today known as the Yellowhead Pass. And his body, Nasuʔkin's body, well, it formed the Rocky Mountains. And Napika, the Great Spirit, Napika, the Creator, says to those first human beings, you have just lost a giant of the water and a giant of the land. It is now your responsibility to look after the water, to look after the land. And the Tuxkamna, the creatures, the animals, the four-leggeds, the birds, the fish, the Tuxkamna, they shared that story with the Nasuʔkin, with the human beings. And the human beings shared that story with their children and their grandchildren, all through time, sharing that story with their children and their grandchildren. Until, well, just about 50 years ago now, my grandfather was sharing that story with me. I'm so glad to be sharing this story with you on this day this National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Senator Sinclair said on the day that the report from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, on the day that that report was being released to Canadians, to all of our country, Senator Sinclair said that he believed that one of the big parts of reconciliation is this idea of creating relationships of mutual respect. That he believed that this was one of the great jobs that was ahead of us, is this idea of creating relationships of mutual respect. And so I thank you, Abra, for inviting me here today to share this Ktunaxa story with you. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I really do feel that it's going to be in this way, this idea of trying to form these relationships of mutual respect. I really do appreciate that your group is interested in the story of the Ktunaxa people, in our stories, in our modern story, the story that we still tell to this day, the Ktunaxa story that is still being created each and every day that we wake up. And so I'm so glad that I had this time to be able to share with you. Another thing that was said when Truth and Reconciliation became a big part of our lives here in this country, another thing that was said is that there's another R that needs to be remembered. Reconciliation, yes, but this other R is recognition. Recognition needs to be a part of the journey that we're on. Recognition of the nations, people that exist all across Turtle Island. Turtle Island is an indigenous term used for North America. It comes from the storytelling of the Ojibwe people. Turtle Island, North America, there's indigenous nations from coast to coast to coast. There are indigenous people, indigenous nations. And so we need to be recognized in that way, individual nations of people with our languages and our culture, our stories. And so I'm so glad that I get an opportunity to be able to be sharing with you today, sharing with you the place names that have been here for thousands of years. This story is an old story. And these place names that I've been sharing with you today are thousands of years old. If you think about it, the science of archaeology has said to the Ktunaxa people that there is scientific archaeological evidence of our existence here in this part of the world, dating back some 10,000 years. Some 10,000 years. And so for a people to be in a place for that long, we must have had place names. Otherwise, how would we have known where we're going? How would we know where we're meeting in the springtime? Well, in the spring, we'll meet at, that place. No, we had place names. And so these place names that I was sharing with you during the creation story, they are the ancient place names of this place that you now know as the Kootenays. These places known today as Revelstoke and Castlegar, Cranbrook, have names that are thousands of years old. For reconciliation, there needs to be recognition. And so just recognition of these place names is a step towards reconciliation. I encourage each and every one of you to take a look at Ktunaxa.org, the website of the Ktunaxa Nation. Pull down menu, who we are. Click on the creation story. Read what Nasuʔkin wrote. It is our public version of the story now. We call it our public version of the story because I've been told that a full retelling of Ktunaxa creation could actually take something like 3 days. They used to gather for days to tell the story. Me, when I think about it, I was told by an elder of mine, his name was Herman Alpine, was the one that used to talk to me about the idea of 3 days to tell the story. And so Herman and I, when we talked about it, think about it, Herman has passed on. now. I miss the man a lot. But when Herman and I used to talk about the creation story, used to think about how 3 days, how could that be? 3 days of storytelling. Well, when I think about it, I realize that maybe that first day was completely dedicated to those songs and those prayers that all the Tuxkamna were talking about. I think an entire day could be dedicated to that because there's so many living beings in this world. So just taking that first day to remind ourselves of the songs and the prayers. And then that second day I've always envisioned would be the chase, the day of the chase. And so we would be going around and around in those two rivers, and we'd be hearing the stories, the place name stories. I shared just a few of them with you today. But there are so many other Ktunaxa place name stories along those two rivers that, it could probably take a whole day just to sit and remind ourselves of the place names throughout our homelands. And then the third day, I've always envisioned that third day was probably the celebration day. Because in the story, it's the celebration of the human beings coming to the earth. And so for me, that's the full Ktunaxa creation story. Hopefully someday in my lifetime, I'll be able to experience that. But for now, we continue to tell this public version of our story, and we continue to put it out there for folks that have come to the Kootenays. You folks, you're here, you've made your home here in the Kootenays. Maybe some of you were born here in the Kootenays. My guess is a lot of you moved here from somewhere else. But for those of you who were born here in the Kootenays, this is the story of the place where you were born, the ancient story of the place where you were born. For those of you who have moved here, this is the story that's been told for millennia with the Ktunaxa people. And so it makes me happy today to know that on this day, this National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, it makes me happy to be able to share the story with people who are obviously very passionate about being Kootenay people. You've all made that choice to be part of a group known as the Kootenay Food Policy Group. And that's impressive to me. I didn't know that this group existed until Abra reached out to me. So thank you, Abra. I think that this story probably speaks to a lot of you because of that passion that you have for our homelands and for food. Such an important story when you think about food. And so I'm just so glad that you guys reached out to me. I'm very glad that you were interested in making sure that this day that you had scheduled your meeting, when you realized that it had become the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, I'm so glad that your group realized that this needed to be a part of your day. And so I'm glad to be a part of your day today. But I just want to remind you one more time before I finish speaking that really today started back a decade ago or so by that woman named Phyllis Wabstad Jack. She was Phyllis Jack when she went to residential school. On the day that she got to residential school, wearing that brand new orange shirt that was bought for her by her grandmother, it was taken away from her. She never got it back. And so Phyllis wanted to try to say to people, look, my orange shirt is just a symbol, really just a symbol of what happened in those schools. Stories like the one that I just shared with you today were literally taken away. They were forced away from people, just like that orange shirt. But unlike Phyllis's orange shirt, we've been able to find a way to get it back. There was a way that it survived. My people are resilient. The indigenous people of Turtle Island are resilient people. We're still here, even after all of the attacks on us this century and a half, and even longer for some nations. Century and a half for Ktunaxa, because contact didn't happen for Ktunaxa until the 1800s. And so I really thank you for making some time in your schedule, your meeting today, to hear from me. I really appreciate it. I'm happy today. I'm happy that you've allowed me a little bit of time with your group. I'm grateful today. I'm grateful that I get an opportunity to share this story that means so much to me with more people. I'm trying to tell this story to as many Kootenay people as I can before I pass on, because I think that this story is important for all Kootenay people, not just Ktunaxa people, but all Kootenay people. And if you were born here, in the Kootenays, in the homelands of the Ktunaxa, this is where you were born, well, this is one of your stories too. And I am a storyteller. I've been a storyteller for a long time now. I understand and I realize the nature of storytelling. As soon as I put it out there, it can be retold. The story can be retold. I get that. I realize that as a storyteller. And so I want each and every one of you to know that in my heart today, I was giving you that story. I truly was giving you that story. And I know as a storyteller, I'm hoping as a storyteller that some of you out there will retell this story. Share it with your friends. Share it with your colleagues. It's the nature of storytelling, I know that. But like I did at the start of the story, I hope that you will cite your source when you're sharing the story. I needed to cite my sources, my grandmother, my grandfather, Wilfred Jacobs. So grateful to those people and to the other elders that came before me. And so today I'm remembering them. I'm remembering them. I'm telling the story for them. Abra, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Dachas.
Thank you. That was amazing. That was amazing.